Exposed, bride discovers groom's betrayal, unexpectedly marries delivery guy a hidden billionaire. The days leading up to her wedding should have been filled with joy, but Sarah felt the shadows creeping in as she uncovered Mark's betrayal. How could she have been so blind? The man she planned to spend her life with, seemingly perfect, entangled in a web of deceit aimed at ruining her family's medical practice. Her rushing thoughts filled her mind as she pressed her hands against the cold marble countertop, wrestling with a mix of disbelief and heartache. She could hear her father's voice in her head, reminding her to trust her instincts and adhere to the values he imparted. Loyalty is sacred, integrity and non-negotiable. In that moment, the clarity was stark. Her commitment felt like a shackle. With every passing hour, the weight of her decision loomed larger, the wedding date like a ticking clock counting down to oblivion. What would it mean to walk down that aisle? Her heart thundered as if trying to drown out the chaos of her mind. She gazed out over the town from her hospital break room, where the laughter of patients and staff echoed in the background, epitomizing the life she had vowed to protect. Yet, the promise of her future with Mark shattered like glass, leaving her teetering on the edge of a precipice. Would she press forward with a charade or disclose the truth that could ruin everything her family had built? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah returned to her work, Jamie, the delivery guy, entered with his usual warmth. His presence felt like a fleeting summer breeze, something genuine in her sterile, chaotic world. They exchanged pleasantries, his easy laughter a stark contrast to her turmoil. Each time their paths crossed, a part of her felt inexplicably drawn to him, but she pushed that feeling down, reminding herself she was engaged to Mark. Still, doubts began to gnaw at her resolve. Would she truly be happy sacrificing her true connection for a life built on deception? As their conversations deepened, Jamie's hidden story started to unfold, a billionaire who despised the hollowness of wealth. He had climbed the ranks not through privilege, but through authenticity and grit, revealing a soul that echoed the very values her father had instilled in her. Every shared laugh drew her closer to a realization she fought against the possibility of a life lived for herself rather than for appearances. But each time Mark crossed her mind, she felt pulled back into the storm of obligation. Moments before her wedding, Sarah's heart raced, mind whirling. Would she abandon everything for a man she barely knew who embodied honesty? And what if she chose incorrectly, shattering her family's legacy? As tension gripped her, she pictured standing at the altar, Mark waiting with a convincing smile that now felt like a mask hiding malevolence. That twisted notion darkened the prospect of her future as the wedding day inching closer weighed heavily. Caught between fear and desire, she felt the pressure mount, inching closer to a breaking point. As she gazed across the venue, there was Jamie, watching her intently. In his eyes, she saw something absent from her life for too long: authenticity. But in that chaos, Mark approached, determination in his gaze, ready to reclaim her. Anxiety coiled in her chest. This was the moment everything could change. Who would she choose? The gilded path of deception or an uncertain future, where love embraced honesty? The final, unyielding question remained, when the truth surged forward. Would she have the courage to embrace it? The murmurs of guests mingled with the rhythmic ticking of the clock, each second amplifying Sarah's internal conflict. She stood paralyzed, caught between the facade of an impending wedding and the whisper of a possible life outside this scripted moment. Her heart fluttered as Mark's eyes, once affectionate, now bore a predatory urgency that made her skin crawl. Every smile he flashed felt coated with ulterior motives, twisting the image of a future she once craved. "Sarah," Mark's voice cut through her haze, breaking her reverie. "You ready?" The question hung in the air like a noose. Would stepping toward him mean sealing their fate? The thought churned in her gut. I need a moment," she replied, forcing the words past trembling lips. The air around her thickened with tension as she fought against the tide of obligation threatening to pull her under. She turned, her gaze falling to her phone, the screen illuminating with a fresh message from Jamie, simple yet clarifying. "Hey, just checking in. You okay?" Just the thought of him sparked a flicker of warmth inside her. Jamie radiated sincerity, a sharp contrast to the carefully constructed world Mark occupied. Each interaction jarred the fragments of her identity loose, compelling her to confront the woman within who had been suffocated by societal expectations and a future she hadn't chosen. "Do you remember what you told me about family?" Jamie's laughter played in her mind, effortless and inviting. "It's about being there for one another, supporting through storms." He represented everything her heart yearned for, yet every moment stretched before her like a maze fraught with blind corners. As she stepped outside to breathe, the brisk air bit against her skin. There was a clarity she craved amid the chaos, and echo of her father's wisdom floating just beyond her grasp. The walls of her family's legacy pressed down, suffocating in their expectation. Would they still value loyalty if it was built on a falsehood? In that instant, passion and logic collided. Failures ran rampant within Mark's deceitful grasp, but breaking free carried a weight of its own. Turning away from the altar not only meant losing Mark, but also shattering the carefully woven tapestry her family had constructed. The thought alone turned her stomach. What lay beyond the wedding was unknown, but so was the potential for self-discovery. Could courage be found beneath the layers of duty? With determination knitting her brow, Sarah turned toward the venue. She had stopped allowing others to determine her path, but the gravity of her situation left her breathless. She needed to confront Mark, to wrestle with her choices decisively. "Sarah." The urgency in Mark's voice pulled her back momentarily, as though he sensed the wavering of her resolve. Any moment now, their roles would collide, destiny hanging on the edge of their confrontation. Was she ready to confront him with the truth? In that moment, everything was poised for a shift. She stood at a fork, the sharp winds of change swirling around her. Would she embrace authenticity with Jamie and risk everything? Or would she return to the benumbing security Mark represented? The door creaked, and Sarah stepped forward, taut with intention. The truth loomed like thunder in the distance, and she could no longer shy away from its call. Now was the time for clarity. The moment had arrived to face the lies that had tangled her fate, but as she pushed through the threshold, her mind clouded, one unsettling thought pressed close. What if the truth she sought had the power to unravel everything she believed? The air within the venue roared with laughter and chatter, but to Sarah, it felt as though she had plunged into a soundless void. She stood framed in the doorway, heart pounding against her ribcage, the weight of every gaze compressing her spirit. Mark was grinning beneath the floral arch, an embodiment of everything she had once envisioned for herself, yet the very idea of stepping toward him now made her stomach twist. As she hesitated, she could sense the ripples surging around her. Each syllable in her head sounded like an echo of a life designed by others, a path crafted by her family's expectations. Every step toward Mark felt akin to binding shackles around her feet, while retreating felt like an audacious act of liberation. "Sarah." He called again, voice laced with impatience. His composure was disintegrating, the edges of confidence fraying as he grasped for the woman he believed he was about to bind to himself eternally. But Sarah could not ignore the gnawing suspicion that had festered in her gut. Who was this man she was supposed to marry? What truths lay beneath the surface of charming smiles? Glimmers of clarity flicked through her mind, images of Jamie settled in deeply, a cornerstone of authenticity against her whirlwind doubts. With him, conversations spiraled freely, unhindered by the pretense she felt with Mark. It ignited a longing for sincerity, a pulsing need for connection devoid of ulterior motives. Running a hand through her hair, she tried to quell her racing heart. Could she lean into that desire for genuine connection? She envisioned a life she could cultivate if she dared to choose differently, one filled with authentic laughter and roots planted in truth rather than obligation. "Mark," she finally said, voice steadying as she took a brave step into the thrumming heart of the room. She was surprised by her own resolve, the way her feet felt lighter as she moved. "We need to talk." The air thickened with tension as Mark's brow furrowed, a storm brewing in his chest. "Not here, Sarah. Everyone's waiting. We'll ruin everything if we keep pretending." The words tumbled from her lips, unabashed and raw. The guests blurred into oblivion as her focus locked on Mark. "Ruin what, exactly? Our perfectly curated image. Our carefully orchestrated futures." The realization swelled, cutting through the thick facade she'd been greeted with all evening. In pursuing the life everyone else envisioned, she had arrived at a juncture where the illusion fragmenting before her felt more real than the ceremony intended to bind her. Mark's composure cracked further, revealing the desperation beneath. But beneath his impatience, Sarah saw a flicker of fear. He didn't want to lose her, not to Jamie, not to anyone. She could wield that power, and the contemplation invigorated her. Moments stretched agonizingly as she navigated her thoughts. The need to confront Mark felt as essential as it was terrifying. She was on the precipice of something life-altering, standing before the precipice of her own identity. Embracing that truth was liberation, and yet, also an abandonment of a life scripted. Around them, whispers grew louder, but Sarah was determined to carve her own narrative. "I need to know who you really are. Can you give me that?" Each word held gravity as she waited, heart racing, on the edge of breakthrough. Was he capable of true connection? Could he relinquish the pretense? And in that pregnant pause, reactions flitted across his face: denial, anger, and somewhere beneath, uncertainty. As the weight of her question hung like a question mark in the air, she knew this moment defined far more than the vows they would or wouldn't exchange. It held the potential for personal renewal or the spiral into continued deception, with the guests unwittingly becoming spectators to the fracture of a carefully crafted facade. She steeled herself for whatever lay ahead. Would she find clarity, or would Mark's truth reveal a darker side lurking behind his charming exterior? The world seemed to hold its breath. The moment had come, and the truth would soon unveil itself. Mark's face contorted, shifting from feigned patience to something much darker. "Sarah, this is not the time," he pressed, his voice low but firm, synthetic confidence underpinning thinly veiled anger. For a brief moment, she could almost feel the expectations weaving around the room, spiriting everyone away from the truth they no longer wished to face. He was an architect of their shared narrative, and she realized that without her input, it remained a hollow shell. "Maybe it's exactly the time," she retorted, mustering all her newfound courage. Though her voice trembled slightly, a fire ignited deep within her, a fierce determination to dismantle the lies that had cocooned her existence for too long. "It's just we're supposed to be celebrating," he murmured, as if bewilderment drowned out the brazen honesty she craved. It struck her that Mark had built an emotional fortress, fortified by his own illusions of grandeur and the ideal of a woman to match it. "And what is there to celebrate?" she challenged, a tinge of bitterness sharpening her tone. As she spoke, a sliver of clarity cut through the haze of anxiety. The irony was palpable. Wasn't it time to celebrate authenticity rather than artifice? The answer resonated deep within her as guests milled about, oblivious to the breaking ground of a pivotal moment. In that instant, she saw a future beyond the lavishness of that day, an idea unencumbered by chains of expectation. Jamie's laughter echoed faintly in her mind, the exhilarating thought of unabashed conversations loomed large. Torn between moments of fear and excitement, she confronted the reality something had to give. "Tell me what I need to know, or let me go," she stated, conviction wrapped tightly around her words. The raw honesty served as a litmus test, her heart pounding as Mark's expression flickered with surprise, anger, and anxiety. Deep inside, she felt the resolve hardening her will. "I can't just undo everything we've built," he said, his voice shifting towards desperation. The facade was wearing thin, and she felt a pang of empathy for the boy hiding beneath the bravado. Yet it wasn't enough for her to rescind her power. Whatever they had built lacked the foundational truth needed to endure. She owed it to herself to seek clarity. "It's all built on sand, Mark," she replied softly, but resolutely. "If we can't share who we are for real, then what's the point? I want the truth, skeletons and all. Silence settled like a weight. Surrounding guests were mere silhouettes in a world solidifying around them. Sarah's breath came steadily, her pulse racing with a peculiar mix of fear and liberation. There was a reckoning poised at the edge, her journey of self-discovery had been on the brink of awakening. I'm not perfect, Sarah. I've messed up, he finally confessed, the air between them thickening with vulnerability. I keep up the image because that's what people want from me. But why would you want that? Don't you want the perfect life? The question reverberated, igniting an internal battle. Perfect life? Or a life that reflected the essence of who she truly was? Mark's realization offered a glimpse into the dynamics of their relationship that she'd ignored for far too long, a mirror reflecting both his desire for conformity and her longings for authenticity. Maybe I want real over perfect, she said, softly yet resolutely, the truth unraveling in her mind. In realizing her own desires, Sarah began to grasp the full pain of the facade that both she and Mark had built. As Mark's eyes widened in a blend of confusion and fear, she dug deeper within herself, ready to shoulder the potential fallout. There had to be more to their story, layers obscured beneath the surface. Together, they stood precariously on the brink of acknowledging their truths, but the shadow of the impending revelation loomed large, the feeling of urgency coiled tighter, the moment stretched long, and Sarah braced herself for the response that could change everything. Would Mark embrace this new honesty, or would fear shatter it all? Uncertainty trembled in the air as she watched him wrestle with the decision, knowing deep down that the answer would serve as a revelation not just for him, but for her and the life she longed to reclaim. As she awaited his response, Sarah knew that they were two stories colliding at this pivotal crossroad, and the next word spoken could either sew up the fabric of their shared illusions or tear them wide open. Would she be ready for whatever came next? The air between them crackled with unspoken words and paralyzing anticipation. Sarah could see in Mark's eyes the tempest brewing, an inner conflict that mirrored her own. Had she really unraveled the tapestry of their lives with those few courageous declarations? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Mark's gaze dropped, concentrating on the floor as a shadow of defeat washed over him. She felt a pang of empathy, yet a stronger urge insisted she push forward. The silence was suffocating, wrapping around them until it almost felt tangible. Sarah clenched her fists, reminding herself that whatever his response, she had ventured into this unknown willingly. Mark, she ventured cautiously, if you don't say anything, I will have to assume the worst. Speak your truth. Please. Her voice was a whisper, though solid conviction ran through it. She had to know that he lifted his head slowly, revealing an unguarded vulnerability that struck her like a jolt. As he opened his mouth, the hesitation was palpable. I thought that by creating the perfect narrative, I could somehow become it. But perhaps I've lost ourselves in the pursuit. His voice trembled, laden with emotion that grated against the polished facade he had always portrayed. I don't know how to unravel it. You can start by being honest, Sarah urged, the words tumbling out. Mark nodded slowly, but doubt still clouded his expression. I buried the parts of myself that I thought you wouldn't accept. I thought that if I presented a beautiful picture, you'd love me more for it. I thought it would be enough. His gaze wavered, and for a heartbeat, Sarah thought he might crumble, the longing for a connection that reached deeper than pretense overwhelmed her. Mark, I want to love the authentic you, but I need to see who that is. You have to unearth the truth, even if it's messy. His brow furrowed, and he shifted uncomfortably. It's just I've had moments of weakness, regrets, things I can't take back. The admission seemed to hang in the air between them like a fragile thread. Sarah pressed her lips together, wrestling with the gravity of her own response. We all have scars, Mark. But instead of letting them define us, we can own them, she declared, her heart racing with a newfound determination. What does it mean to you if we face our realities together? I don't know, he admitted, the weight of defeat settling into his voice. I've built everything around the illusion. I never wanted to be seen as weak, he whispered, vulnerability emerging from the depths of his carefully constructed wall. But that's strength, she argued softly. Accepting our flaws. Not hiding from them. Each imperfection shapes us into who we are meant to be. The flicker in his eyes suggested that her words were cutting through the fog of his fears, but doubt still clung to him like mist in the morning. What if we can't? What if we lose what we have? He asked, his voice raw with desperation. Then maybe what we had wasn't real to begin with, she shot back, her heart pounding. But I'd rather take the risk of losing you than live a lie. I need more than this. The words left her breathless, and she saw his face pale as the implications settled in. The foundations of their relationship trembled, but she felt empowered, liberated from the shackles of their shared deceit. In that moment, something shifted within Sarah. The timid girl who had hidden behind others' expectations was finally stepping into her own narrative, wielding her truth like a shield. Mark inhaled sharply, as if awakening from a deep slumber. Maybe you're right, he stammered, an inkling of resolve threading into his tone. Is it too late to start over? The question hung in the air, tantalizing yet terrifying. Was it time to reconstruct their lives on a foundation of authenticity? She dared to hope, but she knew the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. I want to try, she said at last, determined to take the chance. As they locked eyes, a flicker of something new sparked between them, an alliance forged in vulnerability. Yet, how would they traverse the stormy sea of their own truths? The struggle for honesty loomed ahead, and the weight of their past hung heavily in the balance. Would they emerge together, or would the shards of illusion shatter under the weight of authenticity? Sarah felt the gravity of what was to come, her heart racing with renewed purpose. The moment had arrived, now it was crucial to confront not only each other but also the fears that had held them captive. Could they do it? Would they embrace the chaos of rebuilding combined realities? As Mark's expression shifted, she braced herself for an answer that would shape not just their relationship, but the trajectory of her own awakening. Sarah's mind swirled, grappling with the implications of Mark's question. The prospect of starting over felt both exhilarating and ominous. Her heart thudded loudly in her chest, echoing the brewing storm between them. Suddenly, it wasn't merely about Mark's journey to authenticity, it was as much about her reclamation of self as well. I want more than just a surface, she repeated, now more a declaration to herself than to him. Whatever comes next, I need to know it's real. I refuse to spend another minute trapped in an illusion. Mark nodded slowly, but uncertainty still marred his features. It was a fragile beginning, powered by a shared vulnerability neither had known before. We can't pretend, can we? He whispered, almost to himself. But who am I without the mask? The truth of that question hit Sarah like a gust of wind. She realized that they both were shackled by the chains of their respective personas. Mark had locked away parts of himself to fit an ideal, while she had stifled her voice beneath expectations. It was a painful conclusion to confront, but an urgent one nonetheless. Their circumstances demanded immediate action. Let us talk about what's buried beneath, she offered, hoping to pave a path forward. What do you hide from me? The question hung heavily between them, but she clenched her teeth and held her ground. I've made poor choices, he finally admitted, dread creeping into his voice. There are things I regret, where I misled myself and others. Things you probably hate me for. I can handle it, she reassured him, though her heart raced. Lies cause wounds, Mark. But healing takes honesty. His gaze hardened for a moment, grappling with resistance. What if the truth fractures everything? What if you walk away in disgust? Their eyes locked, and the gravity of that truth settled in her bones. The fear of losing him was visceral, yet she knew the greater risk lay in continuing to dwell in shadows. I want to leave because of your truth. I'll be here because of it, no matter how difficult. In that moment, Sarah felt the shift within herself. Not just an urge but a fierce determination began to take root. She wasn't merely a passive participant in this narrative, she was the architect of her own story, and it was about time she seized that power. "Let us confront it together," she said fiercely. "I won't be afraid, and I hope you won't be either." Mark exhaled, his shoulders visibly relaxing. "I'm scared," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm more terrified of losing you." "Then face it with me," Sarah urged, realizing that she too had to confront her own fears, the ones rooted in doubt, the ones that whispered she wasn't enough, or worse, too much. As Mark reached for her hand, there was an unspoken agreement, a pact forged in the face of vulnerability. His grip felt firm yet tentative, mirroring the tension they shared. The air between them shifted, carrying hints of hope but also the weight of impending revelations. "Tonight," he said, an edge of urgency creeping into his tone. "Let us not hold back. Let us lay everything bare." She could see the determination flickering in his eyes, a reflection of her own. "Yes. Let us expose the truth, however ugly, so we can reconstruct it into something beautiful." Her mind raced with the potential outcomes of their honesty. What hidden truths would emerge? What pieces of their past would shift the very fabric of their reality? She felt both anticipation and trepidation. And as night enveloped them, a path lay clear ahead, one marked by the trials of deep honesty. But would they emerge from this confrontation intact, or would their realities splinter under the weight of disclosure? As she braced for the potential upheaval, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of an awakening far more profound than either had anticipated. The journey no longer belonged just to Mark. It belonged to her, too. Would they be prepared for the fallout? Only time would tell. The shadows thickened in the dim light of the room as Sarah and Mark sat facing one another, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, a silent reminder of the confrontation that loomed ahead. Sarah's chest tightened, an odd mix of determination and fear coursing through her veins. "What if I told you I've been living a lie?" Mark's voice cracked the stillness, stark and raw. The sincerity in his eyes, though laced with trepidation, was grounding. It invited her to step into the unknown, yet Sarah could feel her pulse quicken at the implications. "Then I'd say you owe it to yourself to embrace the truth," she replied, her voice steady, surprising even herself. He hesitated, the weight of his concealed reality battling against the urge to protect her. "For years, I've chased success to fill a void, to become someone I thought I should be," he confessed, his gaze falling to the floor. "I projected this image of confidence, but inside, I often feel like a fraud." His admission sparked a flicker of vulnerability in her. Sarah knew this fear, the desperate need for approval that forged her own mask, a role of compliance to satisfy others' expectations. "What does that even mean for us?" she asked, her voice softening. "It means I've hidden parts of myself not only from you but from me," he responded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose you, but I don't know how to show you the real me." In that fleeting moment, she felt their barriers begin to crumble, revealing the raw, unrefined shards of their identities. "Together, we can confront our pasts and find a way forward," she proposed, each word infused with newfound strength. "We owe it to ourselves to unearth the truth, however painful." Mark lifted his head, uncertainty etched across his features. "Are you really ready for that?" he asked, gauging her conviction. "I've spent too long in the shadows, pretending to be someone else," she admitted, a fire sparking within. "This moment, the uncertainty of it, feels liberating. We won't just unravel our pasts, we'll redefine who we can become together." The heaviness of fear began to lift, a faint glimmer of hope entering the space between them. As they prepared to dive deeper, Sarah felt the last vestiges of facade fall away. She was rooted firmly in her own truth, an empowering realization that propelled her toward authenticity. "Take a breath, Mark," she urged gently. "This is about liberation. Speak freely." He inhaled deeply, the act urging the truth to rise to the surface. "I never went to law school. I've been managing my father's investments instead." Sarah blinked, her heart stuttering in shock. Did he construct this persona based on external expectations? Why would you hide that? She questioned, an urgency threading through her tone. I thought it would disappoint you, he admitted, his eyes flickering with guilt. I wanted to be more than what I deemed as enough. But I realize now that it's that very insecurity that created this rift between us. A swell of empathy washed over Sarah. She, too, had wrapped herself in layers of expectation, hiding her own passions beneath the surface. We've both been afraid, she reflected back, a mix of vulnerability and strength filling the room. As the air thickened with unspoken depths, Sarah recognized that their journey together had veered far beyond mere revelation. It was about discovering the freedom that lay within honesty, freedom that could redefine everything. Tonight is about letting go, she declared, emboldened by the vulnerability she encountered in Mark. We're each a work in progress. Who we are right now, together, is enough. She could see the flicker of acceptance in his eyes as he absorbed her words, but beneath that acceptance lay a simmering uncertainty. Would they truly unearth all that existed beneath their facades? Would the deeper truths they faced forge a new path, or tear them irrevocably apart? As they inhaled the rawness of their truths, Sarah sensed the impending storm swirling outside. The turbulent winds mirrored the restless journey they had only just begun to embark on. Promise me we'll hold nothing back, Mark whispered thickly. The vulnerability of the moment shone brightly. This was the threshold to a transformation neither had envisioned. Promise, she replied, gripping his hand tighter. With that pledge hanging in the air, she felt a spark ignite within her, a fervent urge to crack open the layers that bound them both. They had opened the door to a scary yet exhilarating unknown. But what lay beyond that threshold remained to be seen. Her heart raced again, both with trepidation and anticipation, wondering how far their revelations would stretch and what unforeseen horizons were waiting for them on the other side. The journey, she knew, was only just beginning. Would they find the strength to endure the revelations yet to come, or would they become lost in the depths of their pasts? Only time would reveal the answer. As the echoes of their promises lingered in the air, Sarah felt a buzzing energy surge within her, inspired by the vulnerability they just unveiled. Mark's admission hung heavily in the atmosphere, but there was a growing clarity inside her. For the first time, she reflected on her own life choices with intention. How had she let herself drift so far from her passions, molding her identity to fit someone else's expectations? Mark, she started, her voice steady, I think we both need to dig deeper. You've taken that first step by revealing your truth. I need to share mine, too. The words were solid, each syllable asserting what she had long pushed aside. He nodded, a mix of relief and apprehension flickering across his face. What do you mean? I've been avoiding my own dreams, she confessed, her heart racing. When I graduated college, I wanted to pursue photography, but I succumbed to the idea of just getting a corporate job, a 9-to-5. It felt safe, familiar. Mark leaned forward, taking in her words. Why didn't you just go for it? Why play it safe? I was scared, she admitted bitterly, the weight of her own truth resurfacing. Scared of failing, of disappointing my family, of stepping outside that bubble I'd constructed. But in doing so, I shut down parts of myself that crave creativity and expression. And now, I'm just existing, rather than living. The silence that followed buzzed with unacknowledged desires and regrets, the quiet aftermath of self-revelations. With each word she voiced, Sarah unearthed buried shards of herself. She could see the reflection of her fears in Mark's eyes, their common struggles weaving a tenuous bond that began to reshape her view of them as individuals. What if I started taking those steps? She pondered aloud, calculated yet palpable excitement flaring. What if I began to work on my photography again? Maybe even show my work to others? Mark's expression shifted from concern to a subtle encouragement. That sounds incredible, Sarah. But alongside that, we need to keep confronting our layers. What else are you hiding from yourself? His question hung in the air, a challenge laden with depth. Did she dare look deeper? Was she ready to face the fear of judgment waiting just below the surface? There had always been a part of her that believed vulnerability was a weakness, yet, as she sat across from Mark, it dawned on her, it was the very pathway to her strength. With newfound resolve, she decided to be bold. I've let the expectations of others dictate my choices for far too long. It's time I redefine my narrative and follow what truly inspires me. Mark studied her with an intensity that sent a shiver of vulnerability through her. What if our exploration becomes the catalyst for change, not just for ourselves but for each other? The thought ignited a spark. Would this journey of peeling back layers genuinely lead to liberation, or reveal truths they weren't prepared to confront? Let us take tangible steps, Mark proposed, his voice firmer now. Why don't we set a timeline? Something like every week we share one goal, something achievable related to our new paths. Sarah smiled, exhilaration cutting through her nagging fears. I love that, she said, her mind racing with possibilities. We could even check in with each other on our progress. I need that kind of accountability. As they made notes on their phones, she felt the momentum building. Each goal they shared felt like an anchor keeping them tethered to this moment of transformation. Mark suggested visiting a local gallery where budding photographers could exhibit their work. So, I'm taking the first step on this journey, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark's eyes sparkled with encouragement. And I'm ready to make my own shift. No more facades. The storm outside intensified, rattling the windows. It echoed the turbulence within them. Yet, the heart of their dialogue turned from fear into determination, igniting an urgency that stemmed from an uncharted territory filled with potential. Leaving the past behind was daunting, but as Sarah felt the path ahead veering into the unknown, a question echoed in her mind: would they discover the courage to transform not just themselves, but each other as well? The winds howled as they stood on the precipice of change, their shared resolve roaring against the tempest outside. But as the storm swirled ominously, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something dark loomed ahead, waiting to test their commitment. Would the truth ultimately draw them closer or unleash forces that could tear their fragile bond apart? The following day, Sarah was determined to dive headfirst into her commitment to reawakening her passion for photography. She awoke early, the glow from the rising sun spilling into her bedroom like warm brushstrokes on a canvas. The world outside was still sleeping, but inside her, ideas nudged her awake, compelling her to create. There was a tangible excitement blossoming in her chest, urging her to step outside her comfort zone. With trembling hands, she started organizing her old photography equipment, her Nikon lenses, and half-empty sketchbooks. Each object held memories of who she once was, full of ambition and infectious energy. As she dusted off her camera, a wave of nostalgia washed over her. It was a reminder of the vibrant world she had turned her back on. The first goal she set with Mark echoed in her mind: reach out to a local photography collective and inquire about their upcoming shows. While the thought of placing her work under someone else's scrutiny was nerve-wracking, it paled in comparison to the taste of regret she had grown accustomed to. She needed this. Seated at her kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, Sarah plunged into Google, fingers dancing across the keys as she searched for local galleries. A bustling spirit flowed through her as she found several options. Each gallery's website ignited a spark. She began envisioning her photos among others, sharing stories through her art. It felt like stepping out of darkness, a daring act of reclaiming her identity. Just email them, she whispered to herself, a mantra of encouragement she needed to hear. As she composed her message, articulating her passion and intent, doubt crept in, threatening to choke her resolve. What if they didn't like her work? What if she wasn't good enough? But through her uncertainty, she recalled Mark's supportive gaze from their conversation. They were both at the threshold of transformation, and the journey required courage. After hitting send, a thrilling rush surged through her. She had taken the first step. There was no turning back now. Yet, even amidst her triumph, she couldn't shake the feeling of something lingering in the shadows, an unsaid truth that both she and Mark still needed to unveil. Later that afternoon, she met Mark at their usual coffee shop, the familiar scent of roasted beans enveloping them as she settled into a corner with her camera bag slung over her shoulder. Mark arrived moments later, excitement radiating from him as well. His own path had led him to a local workshop focused on personal growth strategies. "How did it go?" he asked, genuine curiosity illuminating his expression. "I took the plunge and reached out to a gallery," Sarah shared, her voice practically humming with enthusiasm. "I think this is the beginning of something incredible." Mark's face lit up in encouragement, a proud smile crossing his lips. Yet beneath his joy, there was a flicker of something deeper, some underlying tension. "That's amazing, Sarah. I'm inspired. I spoke with my boss about shifting to a role that aligns with my true interests. It's a risk, but it feels right." She admired his bravery and felt the collective energy between them, the unspoken agreement of mutual support, a challenge accepted. But before she could delve deeper into her own fears, Mark hesitated. "Listen, we should probably talk about what we hinted at last night." "About layers," he said, his eyes glancing toward the entrance nervously as though seeking refuge from unseen dangers. Sarah's heartbeat quickened, caught off guard by the abruptness of the topic. Here they were, tearing the seams of their pasts, yet there was a strangeness in their honesty that scared her. Was she ready? "Are we ready?" she questioned, her voice smaller than intended. What else lay beneath the surface of their histories? Secrets, emotions, vulnerabilities, a silence enveloped them, heavy under the weight of their shared uncertainty. Each untold story pressed in against them, shaping their surroundings. The coffee shop bustled with life, unaffected by their internal monologues. Yet feeling more like a closed-off sanctuary where truths could be unearthed. "Maybe we need to check in with each other about those daring goals," Mark suggested cautiously. "It could help us unpack what we're truly avoiding. But it might also expose what we're most afraid to share." He shifted in his seat, unease etched across his features. Sarah found herself captivated by this moment, the fine line between disclosure and fear, the thin veil between relief and discomfort. As the chatter around them faded to a distant buzz, she realized they stood before a pivotal moment. One that could either cement their bond or fracture it entirely. What revelations awaited when they dared to peel back layers? Would honesty fortify their connection or expose combustible truths that could ignite flames not anticipated? The shadows of apprehension loomed larger, as outside the walls of their safe cafe, the storm brewed once more. What awaited them when they returned to this vulnerable dialogue, each word potentially unraveling the very fabric of their newly forged alliance? In the wake of their unsettling conversation, Sarah felt a seismic shift within her as she and Mark sat across from each other in their usual coffee haven. The air was thick with anticipation, each moment stretching into an eternity as they prepared to confront their personal truths. The barista routinely churned out lattes, oblivious to the gravity of what lay ahead for them, a pivotal juncture in their lives marked by acceptance and revelation. "Mark," Sarah began, the urgency in her voice slicing through the familiar noise around them, "let's lay it all out on the table. We owe ourselves that. No more hiding." Her heart raced, suffused with both fear and exhilaration. She had crossed the threshold into a realm where honesty reigned, and she couldn't retreat now. His expression shifted, and Sarah sensed his willingness to comply with her earnest intent. "All right," he replied quietly yet resolutely. "I suppose I'll start. There's a reason I've been so insecure about my role in this relationship." He inhaled deeply before releasing his truth like a bound-up secret. "I've been afraid you'd find someone better than me, specifically someone who has what society deems as success." She nodded, her empathy deepening as he spoke. To hear Mark voice insecurities she had felt herself highlighted the profound reality they shared. "I felt similar," Sarah admitted, her voice growing firmer as her own epiphanies rushed forward. "Stepping into the world of photography has always felt out of my reach, like I'd fail if I went for it." Here she was transcending hesitations, ready to embrace who she truly wanted to be. "But I'm done living in fear of disappointing others. It's time I pursue true fulfillment." Mark's gaze softened, vulnerability spilling into the atmosphere between them. Maybe that's what we've both been missing: fulfillment. Not the kind dictated by others, but the kind that sparkles from within us. His words struck chords, awakening something deep inside Sarah. This was the growth she sought, this was the foundation on which they could build anew. They weren't just shedding their pasts, they were sculpting a future free from the confines of expectation. Can we both promise to tackle these personal endeavors not just for ourselves, but for one another? He suggested, his tone hopeful. It's easy to fall back into our comfortable layers of self-doubt. Yes. Let us commit to uplifting each other, Sarah echoed, her heart swelling with determination. That's how we grow together. In that instant, the shackles of uncertainty began to break away. Facing their fears in tandem felt liberating, as though they had unlatched the doors to a shared future ripe with possibility. This connection, born from mutual honesty, mirrored the essence of relationships that thrive in authenticity. As they continued to discuss their visions of success, they established benchmarks: mini exhibitions for Sarah to showcase her photography, workshops for Mark that embraced his interests beyond familial expectations. Every shared goal fortified their partnership, exemplifying their resolve to support each other. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the cafe with dappled light, Sarah felt a deep-seated transformation take root within her. The fear that once held her captive had shifted to a confident anticipation. She caught a glimpse of her future outlined in vibrant colors, no longer overshadowed by the looming specter of doubt. Eventually, they stepped out of the cafe, laughter filling the air as they traversed the sidewalk. Sarah felt emboldened, her spirit unencumbered. We truly can do this, Mark. For so long, I lived beneath the expectations of my family and peers, but I'm ready to soar, she declared, conviction hanging in her voice. In that moment of clarity and solidarity, they each looked toward their paths. Mark's expression reflected new strength, a sense of direction amidst uncertainty. It's liberating, isn't it? Turning fear into a force for personal growth. Yes. Sarah affirmed, excitement spiraling within her. Days turned into weeks, and every engagement brought them closer not just to their ambitions but also to each other. They documented their journeys, celebrated their vulnerabilities, and knitted their lives together in ways that felt authentic, progressive, and fulfilling. In showcasing her photography, Sarah gained validation not just from others but within herself, a powerful reminder of her capabilities. Mark, too, explored realms of leadership and responsibility without the weight of pretense, gradually discovering a role that aligned with his true self. As they stood before an audience at the opening of Sarah's photography exhibit, surrounded by vibrant depictions of life and moments captured in time, Sarah beamed with pride. Her transition had not just awakened her artistry, it had cemented their partnership built on transparency and encouragement. Together, they conquered not only the fears that once ruled their lives but also the notion that their worth was tied to societal expectations. Each shared goal crystallized their transformation, forming a solid foundation of trust and authenticity. In this newfound chapter, Sarah had achieved more than recognition as an emerging artist. She had cemented her place in her own destiny, leaving behind shadows of obligation. With Mark by her side, the life unwrapped before them was painted in genuine colors of hope, courage, and fulfillment, their truths interwoven into a radiant tapestry of life. The moment felt seismic, an accomplishment forged through tumult, conquest, and realization. Sarah no longer succumbed to fear, she radiated confidence in her choices. Let us keep creating together, she whispered to Mark, capturing the beautiful promise that lay ahead. Yes, he replied, a radiant smile breaking across his face. With honesty, we can achieve anything. This was but the beginning, and for Sarah and Mark, every step forward was grounded in the power of their truths. The journey was theirs alone, ready to flourish beyond convention and expectation. As they walked out into the world, hand in hand, Sarah knew this remarkable transformation would leave an indelible mark, one that would be celebrated, cherished, and revisited for years to come. Now, be a part of this journey. You need to subscribe now and join our community to witness more inspiring stories of triumph and transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to help fuel the algorithm's magic. We want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and reflections about this ending. Don't wait even one more second. Share this empowering video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible story of overcoming trials.